This is episode 1 of Off the Track on WIS Sports Radio. Off the Track is about flat track roller derby featuring exclusive interviews. I'm Mick Swagger, and at WIS Sports, we believe that women in sport deserve equal coverage.
I was like, man, I would just not be anywhere near as much of a queer, loudmouth feminist if I didn't have roller derby. Definitely not.
Thank you for joining me on this new show all about roller derby. On our first episode, I'm going to be talking to Tui Lyons from Angel City. But before we get into that interview, I want to chat a little bit about this podcast and why we're here. In my last 10 years of being involved in roller derby, I've met amazing individuals through this journey, and I really believe that most of the magic that happens on the track comes when we're not playing roller derby. From our individual experiences, from the growth that we have as humans interacting with each other, and this community has really been one where I've grown and learned a lot. And so what I'd like to do is interview the people that I've met along the way and learned from. So today we have Tui Lyons of Angel City. Welcome, Tui.
Thank you, Mick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here. So just to get started, can you give us a brief synopsis of your derby career?
Absolutely. I have been playing roller derby for just over 10 years. This will be my 10th season this year. I played the majority of my roller derby in Australia. I started in 2008 with Victorian Roller Derby League in Melbourne, Australia. I spent 2 years skating with them as I was finding my sea legs and just beginning in the sport. I then moved to Wales in the UK, and I spent 2 years skating with Tiger Bay Brawlers in Cardiff, and then popped back to Melbourne for 6 more years and worked with VRDL, which is the shortened league name of Victorian Roller Derby League, while we sort of started to strive towards, really stepping ourselves up in rankings internationally. And then towards the end of that, in the last couple of years, I moved over to Los Angeles, and I'm just about to start my 3rd season with Angel City Derby in LA.
That's amazing. So you've been playing roller derby for 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been playing for 10 years and coaching for about 8 years. So, it's been a very, very long and fruitful journey.
When you played with VRDL was, when you started in 2012, were you on the pathway already to working towards D1, or what was that like?
When I first begun, we're still just trying to get ourselves together, really. We weren't thinking too sort of strategically about rankings and really striving towards, at that stage, being the best team in the world was very unachievable and unimaginable. America is such a dominant force in roller derby in general that it didn't even really seem fathomable at the time that we would be potentially, internationally competitive. But so we were kind of just trying to find our way with the sport, and we definitely always had a competitive drive to seek to improve ourselves and to strive forwards. But I don't think we had, really labeled our goals at that point. By the time that I came back from Wales, that had definitely changed. So when I returned from Tiger Bay, so this would have been 4 years after I started skating, the league was very much actively striving to improve rankings, to step it up, and we're very much on their journey towards the top. For those listeners that are unfamiliar, Victorian Roller Derby League is now the best team in the world. They won the WFTDA Championships last year in 2017. So yeah, at that point, they were. I came back to Australia just after they'd had their very first American tour. So really, to sort of be very competitive on the world stage for a roller derby team, you have to travel to America because that's where the majority of the tournaments are, or at that time there was. That's where you had to go. And so they'd just begun that journey. I watched their first tournament about a month after I'd arrived home playing in America, and I'd arrived home just a little too late to get on the team for that tournament. So yeah, it was definitely the beginning of a very competitive strive from that point when I returned from Wales, for sure.
What are some of the things that helped contribute to working towards that goal? Did you invite coaches besides just the traveling to the US and gaining that experience playing other teams? What else did you guys work on?
Yeah, it was very holistic, honestly. It's, the travel to the States was a very important part of achieving those rankings because at that stage, that was the only way to really get super competitive games. And it was also the only way to establish yourself in rankings because other teams in Australia, while at that time some of them were competitive with us, at that time they were not established in rankings. So yeah, we absolutely hired anyone we'd got anyone who was willing to teach us anything. We'd take it with open arms, quite desperately, honestly. We were just like, somebody's coaching roller derby or anyone coaching roller derby, come here, teach us, we'll take it. There was definitely a real hunger to learn and absorb information from a very early stage. And, a certain humbleness in that as well, I think. We were always open-minded, I think, at that stage, and would take advice and information from anyone who was willing to give it. So we had a lot of international coaches that came over and coached us. I think sometimes one of the biggest motivators that pushed our competitiveness was simply the fear of the unknown. We were so removed from the rest of the roller derby community and really quite isolated being in Australia that it really motivated us to work harder because we didn't actually know how good we were getting. We didn't really know how we would stack up against these teams we were aiming to play and to prepare to play against. So honestly, I think one of the biggest things that motivated our dedication to training and improvement was the fear of performance anxiety, essentially, the fear of not being good enough when we'd spent all this money to go over to the States and put in all this work and, we didn't want to turn up and make fools of ourselves. So it was kind of like that unknown motivated the team incredibly because we just didn't know if we're good enough.
That makes a lot of sense. I think when I visited BRDL in 2015, it was just after the World Cup. And I visited your team and came along to a practice, not really knowing what to expect and not interested in playing derby, but just wanting to hang out. And everybody was so fantastic, like amazing players, but completely unaware of your strength as a team. And it was refreshing to be around a team that had that feeling about it, and every person on there was so humble.
Yeah, I think that was very real. That isolation from the rest of the community definitely sort of removed our ability to get cocky or confident or comfortable. Really, we were always terrified of not doing enough to prepare, and I think that kind of, in some ways that kind of bred an intensely competitive but also humble sort of atmosphere. Until we really sort of like started sort of competing in the top 5, I think that was something that was very, very, very part of the culture. I very much agree.
Yeah, for sure. And, in the 2014 championships, your team didn't make it to the semifinals with that game against London, but it was a beautiful game. Like, you played an amazing tournament. But after the rankings shook out, I think you were ranked 4th, correct?
Lost to London reasonably narrowly in the last couple of jams. I think it ended up being about 40-ish points that we ended up losing by. But yes, as the rankings shook out, that put us in fourth, which we were quite surprised about, but pretty damn ecstatic, honestly.
Yeah. And so when I came to visit, you needed a bench coach at the time, and I was already going to be in the U.S., so I ended up being able to come with you, which was so amazing. But going through that tournament experience, coming from a team playing with Gotham, which, won the Hydra previously, I was with them for 3 of those. I think they had 5 at that point. And then coming to VRDL, who were going into this tournament ranked 4th, but really not even recognizing or embodying what 4th ranking meant. You were like, well, we haven't actually beat all those teams, so now we have to prove it. It was a special experience. Do you remember those games and what you prepared to do as you went into the Big O that season?
Oh, very much so. We were very hungry for it, and we weren't comfortable. You're right. There was some of those teams that we hadn't beaten. So as much as we were stoked to be in that 4th ranking position, we also kind of felt like it wasn't real. It definitely was an experience where we had an expectation now to play at that level, to play as a 4th best team in the world. And we sort of felt the pressure to, okay, man, we got to actually do this now. We've got to actually be that team that everyone expects us to be. So yeah, no, it was a lot of pressure, absolutely a lot of pressure. But at that point, we were starting to get more self-aware about our strengths and weaknesses. So we're starting to really analyze exactly what edge we had over our opponent, and although we felt intense pressure to step up and to perform, that was about at the point where I think we started to become more confident with our strengths and sort of taking ownership over that.
And there was a lot of interesting strategy development the year before, especially with your bench calls, and that season as well. And I think that really gave you an edge on a lot of teams. One, they were unknown to you, but you were also unknown to them. They had no idea what to expect from VRDL.
Yeah, we were consistently underestimated for a number of seasons in a row, which very much worked in our favor. I remember playing games against Philly at playoffs, and I remember playing a number of games that the second we started the game, it was very, very clear that our opposition had completely underestimated us. And I mean, that definitely was a nice feeling because we never really felt we were in the position to underestimate someone, because going to each of these tournaments cost us so much money out of our own pocket, and we'd put in so much time into preparing physically and strategically. You can't possibly take your opposition for granted. So we definitely had probably 2 years where I think our opposition didn't quite understand exactly what sort of a force that they were going to be meeting on the track. And I agree. I think that is definitely when I think previous to that positioning in the rankings, we had just been looking at the top level teams and been like, well, what are the best teams in the world doing? Okay, that looks cool. We'll copy that. We were basically just assuming a subordinate position essentially, and just copying what we felt were the most successful parts of the most successful team strategies. And really at that point, it's when it started to get creative, because we had already, I think, really, sort of like, I guess, tried or worked with a lot of those different strategies. And we sort of, when you start playing those teams directly, you kind of have to be more creative. You're forced to come up with something different. And we had a couple of very creative, talented people on the team. And at that time, just before you joined us as a coach, so just at that point, we had Flamin Galar as our coach, and he's an incredible strategic mind, and such an absolutely fantastic coach, the best coach I've ever worked with. So I think that absolutely fueled that creativity in play, and that innovation in strategy.
Right. as you worked with Gala and as you worked through that season, and finishing the 2015 season at number 3, what was it like then having to leave that environment and going to a completely new one?
It was, it was good and bad. I left the team because I was ready to move on, to change dynamics. There was quite a bit of a change in personnel for that last year, before that last year. So there was definitely a changing of the guard, I guess, between those 2 seasons. And yeah, emotionally, I think I was just ready for a change. I definitely... culturally within the league, things had shifted, things had changed because of that personnel change, which naturally happens when you shift through players and coaches and such. So emotionally, I was in need of a change. I think I had personally got into a little bit of a negative mindset because I was ready for that change, but maybe hadn't recognized it just yet. So there was a lot of really, really good and healthy things that came from that change and that move to Angel City for me as an individual player. But then, yeah, it's really tough to work for 8 years on a journey towards this one goal of winning championships, and then to remove yourself from the team that you've taken that journey with, and step back a little. Angel City at the time, I think were ranked 5th or 7th, like maybe 7th at the time. I think 7th at the time. They weren't too far behind. They were still an incredibly competitive team, and I saw a team with amazing potential. So it wasn't much of a step back, but it just feels different to. It's an interesting experience to kind of like ride this journey for so long and then to step off the train and watch the train keep going. And I think that honestly didn't become very real to me until I watched VRDL win the championship. That was one of the most surreal and emotional experiences I've ever had in my life, watching Victoria win from the stands. That was, yeah, it was pretty intense.
Yeah, and to be processing it, watching it. But also you must have such incredible pride knowing how much you put into that, and the players that are out there on that track that were playing at that moment are ones that you've coached and ones that you've given so much to in the sport. So it must also be satisfying in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, I think everyone's journey is their own, and I would never want to take credit for anyone's individual success or a team's success. But, I was one of many people that contributed to that team's journey and that team's success. And, I think it's kind of, I guess I never want to be presumptuous and sort of own that, I guess. But yeah, no, it is a good feeling. To see sort of something that you've worked so hard on and nurtured and contributed to for so long achieve. But it was, I think, I was dealing with that from a very personal perspective as well. And I had just lost a game that I didn't expect to lose with my team at championships, with Angel City at championships. So that, I think part of watching VRDL win after we'd just suffered such a devastating loss, there was some mixed emotions going on. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as it should be, we spend so much of our lives, pouring our lives into this sport, which is something that I notice a lot, especially about you and being friends with you, is that you have such a positivity, and you gain so much life from roller derby. And so what I'd like to ask is, what are some of the things that you've gained in your personal development that you feel, come from roller derby, or like kind of the lessons that you've learned in roller derby? How has that contributed to personal and career development?
I can't even imagine what type of person I would be if I didn't have roller derby. That's how much it's shaped my life. It's like, it's like imagining your life without your family experiences or your upbringing, or, it's roller derby has crafted who I am as an adult. 100%. I am so who I am today would be absolutely be worlds apart from the person I would be if I did not have roller derby. That I am 100% certain of. I don't think I'd be near as much of a feminist as I am. I don't think I'd be anywhere near as confident talking about that and taking ownership of that label. I don't think I would be as queer or as comfortable being outwardly queer as I am now. I think my taking ownership over my sexuality has been a huge thing that has developed through roller derby, because this community just doesn't really have any boundaries. This community is just like, be whoever you want to be, and that's A-okay with us. Like, you know, and that's an empowering environment to be around in so many contexts. But it's a community that celebrates women and that celebrates queer people, LGBTQ people, in many ways. And I think that I think about those two things. I was like, man, I would just not be anywhere near as much of a queer loudmouth feminist if I didn't have roller derby. Definitely not. So I love it for that. I think about the skills that I've learned as a manager, as a relationship manager specifically. I've captained and coached Victoria for quite a few years, and this will be my second season coaching Angels, second season captaining Angel City, third season coaching them. So I definitely, the magical skills of micromanaging people's emotions to maximize performance is definitely one skill that I've 100% attribute to roller derby, and that applies directly to my career. So my career outside roller derby is event management. I manage art exhibitions. So I am working with a lot of amateur artists, basically trying to get the most out of them to put on a really great exhibition so that they can sell work and develop themselves. So it's a very similar role to what I do with my coaching and captaining. You're working with individual skill sets. You're helping them help themselves improve their skills and polish their overall sort of performance and sort of existence within their community to benefit themselves, and realistically. The better the artists are in my events, the better my events are, and the better players are in my team, the better my team's performance. And so, I definitely think that, relationship management is absolutely a skill that I've honed through roller derby. And just massively, obviously, just in practical ways, like through administration and just like doing a lot of practical league work has definitely helped me in my everyday life considerably. But I think I do wonder about things like conflict management and, grief management and things like that. A lot of those really interpersonal skills I've developed extensively through roller derby, for sure.
I think that that's definitely something, being around you and being on your team and being your friend. You create this amazing positive culture that just surrounds you, and that's what you give to the world. And because you give that, you receive it. But I think it's intentional on a team. So just kind of talking about team culture, how do you get community buy-in in those spaces? And when you need to call someone in that maybe is damaging or don't even realize they're damaging to others, how do you address it? What kind of strategies have you learned to use?
Yeah, I mean, it's always sensitive, obviously, and so particular to the individuals. I think setting an example through personal representation is the best way to get people to buy your story, so to speak. If I want my team to be excited about playing a game, or if I want my team to be excited about a new strategy or a technique or a training method, then I absolutely start with myself. You have to like live what you're preaching to people. And I think that it's my team looks up to me a lot, and I think it's, if I say I'm really excited about a strategy and then I get really fed up with it in a drill and I don't want to finish it and I end the drill, then my actions speak a lot louder than my words in that moment. So I think to get that sort of buy-in, to get that enthusiasm, you have to absolutely live what you're asking others to live as well, And yeah, I absolutely start with positivity. I think you can achieve anything that you want to achieve if you really set your mind to it and tackle those hurdles and those problems and situations with a positive attitude. So yeah, in terms of motivating a team and getting them to work towards goals that you as an individual would like to, I think positivity is a big part of it. I also think inclusion is a big part of it. If I ever have an idea of something that I want to do with a team, or I ever have a goal that I want us to strive towards, first I'll make sure that that's a goal that the team wants, or I will create a situation where the team has the option to discuss, to voice their concerns, opinions, thoughts, voice their excitement. Basically, I think inclusion is key. I think so often, especially in American sports culture, it's very much about coach says this, players do this. And I don't really believe that heavily in that culture. I think it's very, very much about a collaboration and inclusion. So I actively try really hard to, when I have an idea or something that I get excited about, I first share that idea with enthusiasm and excitement and see how that bounces off the team. And then rather than coming in and saying, we're going to do this strategy from now on, I would tend to approach it like, hey guys, I thought of this strategy and I think it's really cool. What do you guys think? I'm really pumped about it. Do you think it could work? And having people sort of like giving people ownership over those ideas as individuals, as a community as whole, I think is really important. So that's generally the kind of approach that I try to take. Not always perfect. There's plenty of times when I drop the ball on that, and I've decided that what I want to do is right, and I will implement it. But I think the most effective way to get community buy-in is absolutely through positivity and inclusion, for sure. In terms of like engaging people or sort of like dealing with like problem solving through those sort of problem people or problem situations, that's a tough one. I think at Angel City we have and at every roller derby league I've ever been at, and I think any sort of mass community organization where you have a body of people that are there by choice, you're naturally going to have some forks in the road and some differing of opinion within the group, and Angel City, of course, is no different to any other of those organizations. But again, I guess I really, now that I'm, breaking it down, I do approach it rather similarly. Like, I think a lot of the issues that people have in leagues are about different bodies of skaters from different skill levels or different teams having some sort of conflict about what the other team is doing or getting or undertaking. Yeah, I think for a lot of leagues and probably sports teams in general, a lot of the issues that come up are about a different skill level or a different team or a different group of individuals having some sort of conflict with one of the other groups or individual groups of skaters or groups of bodies. And so again, I just try and actively engage people from all of those different parties, gather opinions, gather thoughts. I'm very much into kind of like creating a brainstorming opportunity where all of those parties have opportunity to voice their opinion, to share their thoughts, to make sure they feel heard, to make sure they feel included. And that is generally a great standing point for us to then launch into that conflict resolution.
So Tui, you're quite an experienced coach. You've been coaching, you said, for 8 years. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And what sort of teams have you been coaching in the past few years? I know that you've coached Angel City. Are there others as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I do for hire coaching. So I work with leagues of all different abilities. I work with skaters of all different skill levels. So I would say the majority of leagues that I coach are sort of anywhere between sort of rankings wise, anywhere between sort of like 100 and 40-ish. I definitely spend a lot of time with teams around 70s and 80s in the rankings. But yeah, I'm happy to coach anyone. I really enjoy teaching all different skill levels. I absolutely love the enthusiasm of fresh new skaters. So I really enjoy teaching people even the most basic of skills. And of course, I'm super passionate about strategic and complex gameplay. So I really enjoy when teams will employ me to teach them those more complex skills and more advanced sort of strategy as well.
That's great. And you have an amazing perspective as you've experienced 8 of the 10 years that you've played derby outside of the US. So you have an international perspective of roller derby. What have you seen in the growth of derby strategy from that perspective?
You know, it's been really interesting. I think that a lot of the teams outside of the US have been forced to innovate and create very similarly to my experience with VRDL. So I definitely see like a massive surge in hunger and enthusiasm within the European derby scene, which I love. They're absolutely nipping at America's heels, and I think that's very exciting. It definitely shows that no one is to be underestimated in any circumstances. And I think that a lot of those teams probably followed similar thought processes and stuff like that to VRDL in terms of beginning to sort of copy and do what the best teams do. And now it's definitely getting to the point where a lot of those European teams or the top European teams are coming in with different styles. I think, I participated in the World Cup, the 2018 Roller Derby World Cup in Manchester the beginning of this year. And it was really, really fascinating to see how those different countries and regions were playing different stylistically. You could see, Argentina, for instance, are incredible individual skills, like phenomenal speed, phenomenal technical skating skills, footwork and agility. But were less developed in terms of strategic gameplay. And I think Mexico was rather similar. But then they have the influence of a couple of skaters that play in America as well. And then, you're seeing a lot of the European teams come in playing really, really smart, really strategically. And then, of course, you have other teams coming in with brute force, coming in with a muscle. So I think it's exciting to watch that develop. And I'm really excited for it to be at the point where that's becoming more of a common thing, like it used to be just a couple. It used to be London and Victoria, the only teams outside of America that were really doing anything super competitive. But it's kind of really, really exciting to see that just opening up, and it's anybody's game right now, which is really, really fun.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, you were at the World Cup. In fact, you were voted the most valuable player at the World Cup this past tournament. How did that feel?
Pretty damn good. It felt really awesome. I was really humbled and really, really excited to receive that award. I've been working really hard at roller derby for a really long time, and I came into the World Cup with no expectations. I didn't have the opportunity to get back to Australia to train with Team Australia, or to go back and try out. I just did a video submission for the team, so I really wasn't sure exactly how I was going to be played and used by the team, because I think teamwork and team cohesion is just absolutely essential for good gameplay. So I really wasn't sure how my absence would affect how I was played on the team, even though I was confident I was a skilled player amongst that roster. But yeah, I wasn't really sure how that would pan out on the day. So I was really excited to be able to be put into a pretty heavy rotation, and I was super excited to be able to play offense for the entire tournament. So yeah, it kind of, I think that receiving that award was pretty magical, because I kind of got to just step right in to those games without expectation, without anticipation, really. I got to just kind of go in and do my thing and have a really good time doing it. And I think that showed in the way that I played. I enjoyed every single one of those games. So it definitely came through in my gameplay. So I was really stoked to be able to receive that award. Absolutely.
Right. And typically, I mean, Team Australia was comprised of quite a few VRDL skaters and management as well. And one of the techniques that they use is if there's someone in the penalty box, they're going to pull probably the offensive player first, because they're really defense focused. So in that position, as more of a player that wasn't able to attend practices, knowing that you're going in as a primarily offensive player, which was brilliant. You played brilliant games. How did you prepare mentally to be in that space? Because normally you're on a very high rotation and in defense for Angel City. I mean, you play offense as well, but I feel like you're a very defense focused player.
Yeah, it's, I mean, definitely with Angel City, I will go in every jam I can, regardless of the scenario. So it doesn't really matter if it's offense we need or defense we need, or if it's 4 people on the track, I'll be in it. 3 people, I'll be in it. 2 people, I'll be in it. 1 person, it's me. So it's absolutely, it's a different mindset to be probably the highest rotation player within your home team, to then go in and be a lower rotation player, in a primarily a world championship team. For me, I definitely just tried to, I think it's easy to take those things personally, but that's just most simply not what it's about. I was made clear the priorities of the team in terms of defense, and strategically, somewhat I agree with that. So I think for me, I had personally spent some time basically trying to kind of check myself and my expectations, and kind of just leave them at the door, really. Like, I think it's important to have a think about, in these scenarios, how will I be played? What can I expect? How can I emotionally prepare myself for those moments, for those potential excitements or potential disappointments? And then to also kind of, I think if you do that work, preparing yourself, then you're kind of pretty ready to fly with whatever comes your way. But self-awareness is key. And in this moment, it wasn't necessarily like self-awareness about my ability, but definitely about the priorities of the team in terms of focusing on defense. I knew that was the case. My team leadership had communicated that with me in advance, and I was ready for that. So when it came to that, I felt fine about it. I think a lot of the time it's just about preparing those expectations, and both as an individual player in that situation, I obviously have to do that for myself. And then as a leader, I've learnt the importance of preparing the expectations of those on my team, to help them cope with and deal with those moments of change that are required in an elite level sport.
Absolutely. And it's that experience alone is going to help you guide someone else through that process. It's so wonderful. So just for kind of a final question, I wanted to ask you a bit about what the process was like in the final game. Right before the game was played, you brought to your team the importance of giving a platform for Team Indigenous. Can you tell me a little bit about the process of kind of what you thought about and how you approached that with Team Australia?
Yeah, I had been following Team Indigenous's progression throughout the weekend, and I obviously, with us being close friends and you being a leader on Team Indigenous, I felt personally, emotionally invested in the team's progression and journey. But obviously, as a white person, I felt the absolute importance to show publicly a stand of solidarity with Team Indigenous. I think sometimes it's always it's a tricky place to tread as a white person, and all I wanted to do was create a bigger platform and create, take any opportunity that I had to potentially share the message of Team Indigenous with a wider audience. And, being Team Australia being in the final game, we were afforded that opportunity. So I think it is ignorant to not recognize that platform that you are sometimes handed. And so for me, I felt very, very strongly about ensuring that we had some sort of Indigenous representation in our moment before our game, rather than having our anthem. I personally, I love Australia and I'm proud of where I'm from, but I wouldn't say I'm a particularly patriotic person. And our anthem has no personal significance to me or the way I feel about where I'm from, my homeland. And I think that the message that Team Indigenous was sharing throughout the weekend, raising awareness of murdered and Indigenous missing women, was an incredibly important one, and one that deserved every single bit of attention we could get. And I basically approached my team and asked if any of them had any strong feelings for playing our anthem, and any desire for that to be what represented us as a team in our moment before our final game. And I had a pretty unanimous no. We don't have any affiliation with the anthem either. We obviously have a lot of proud Australians on our team, but I don't think that anthem is particularly representative of how most of us felt or feel about our country. And I think that a lot of the people on the team were very proud of what Team Indigenous had achieved, and we're very happy to share that message and raise that awareness that of the sort of work that Team Indigenous had done to kind of create a platform for discussion around those important issues. So I asked the team. The team was, really, as I said, unanimously happy to roll with it. I reached out to you and worked with you to make sure we had an opportunity for Team Indigenous to share their message, both live at the venue and on the live feed to BBC. So honestly, that's probably the thing that I'm the most proud of from World Cup. That was really important to me personally. And I'm really, really excited that we're able to share that stage, because it's, it needs to be talked about. It needs to be, we need to keep having discussions about it and raising awareness in any way we can. So I was really excited to be able to share that stage.
Oh, thank you so much. It was also my favorite moment of the weekend, just to know how well supported we were, and especially knowing that, my friends were there along with me, and you got it, you understood. And but that wasn't the only moment that Team Australia was showing solidarity with Indigenous people from their lands. You also, one of your teammates' mothers had the Indigenous flag, and you also had some Indigenous designs on your uniforms.
Yeah, it was really awesome to have that representation literally on our bodies for the day. We had a local artist, or local to the area of our team manager, up in around the Newcastle area. And we had an artist, Soretta Fielding, who did some designs for us. She's an Indigenous woman, a woman of the Wandura area, and she did some native designs for us to embed in our uniforms. So again, having that Indigenous representation literally on our bodies for the tournament was very important to me. I think a lot of the time in Australian national, sports in general, but also just platforms, there is not enough recognition for our Indigenous population that literally shaped the earth that we get to share now. So I was really, really stoked that we were able to include her designs in the makeup of the team, and that she could be a part of that journey with us as well, so that we could not only represent our players and our country, but also the Indigenous nation.
So beautiful. Thank you so much, Tui, for your time today and for joining me on my first episode of this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure joining you, Mick. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And if you could plug your Insta and Facebook so that people can follow your coaching journey and perhaps request you as a coach, where would they find you at?
Absolutely. They can follow my little weird little life on Instagram at Tui Lyon. That's TUILYON. And then on Facebook, you can hit me up at facebook.com/Tui Lyon. I have a public athlete page. Or if people would like to book me for coaching, they can definitely DM me on either of those services or hit me up at tuilion@gmail.com. So I would love to come and visit. I always love traveling and have a huge passion for coaching. So it's super fun to be able to share that with people.
Oh, wonderful. And I highly recommend Tui as a coach. We just had a great weekend coaching in different rooms, and I could hear what was happening on that side, and we got to have a session together as well, and it was wonderful. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
For more conversations from the world of women's sports, subscribe to WISP Sports Radio on your podcast app and visit wisports.com for blogs, articles, and videos. We'll also find show notes and links for this episode. You can join in the conversation by following us on social media at wisports.com, as well as facebook.com/Derby Swagger. Email us with any comments, questions, or suggestions at info@wispsports.com or derbyswagger@gmail.com. I'll be back next week for another episode of Off the Track. Until then, thanks for listening and supporting women in sport everywhere.